Welcome back to another episode of the Generation Elevation podcast. Now, today I am joined by a very special guest, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation today because I feel like finally we have a moment to go really deep together. And so far, we've just kind of crossed in passing, and I'm just like, okay, I need to have this person on my show because I know that so many of you listening are going to benefit from the beautiful words that he has to say today. This incredible human, he is a coach slash counselor, and he's helping people rewrite the story of their past, helping you to step into more authenticity, more growth, and also more resilience. With that said, I introduce you today, Will Middleton. How are you?
Very good. Thanks, Elise. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And you're right. I feel like it's been a long time coming, this conversation, because we've never been able to spend more than 5-10 minutes with each other in passing. So I'm looking forward to it as well.
And you did come to my breathwork and meditation class at White City, but even then, like, I was just like, oh, Will, you're here. Amazing. And then goodbye.
Which I love, by the way. It was great. You were great as a
Thank
teacher.
you.
And yeah, it was a really good session. But yeah, so finally we can sit down and get really deep with everything that we want to be talking about and all the overlaps we have in each other's lives.
So I think the first thing that I really would like to go over, especially because there'll be people listening to this right now that have no idea who Will Middleton is, okay? So if you were to give them like 3 points, like obviously you're coaching people and you're helping them step into their future self, 3 points on why you do that. Why do you do that?
So a lot of it comes from my own personal story, and I genuinely believe that anyone can be helped. I believe anyone has a choice to turn their life around from whatever they've had to deal with in their past, and sometimes we need that guidance. And I want to be able to help people, no matter what situation they've been in. I want to allow people to realize that their potential is unlimited, and that can come from, even from a place of, if there's been trauma, if there's been pain, suffering, etc., that they are able to create a version of themselves that is authentically them and that is really strong. It builds that resilience because we all have resilience. We all have strength. And, so many people that I've worked with have been through extreme challenges and come out the other side. And it's always a beautiful thing to sort of see that version of themselves come out and think that they can never get there. And that really, that fills me with a huge amount of gratitude that I'm able to at least be a small part of that journey that they go through.
So, okay, this is a really important topic, and I know that there'll be people listening to this resonating with potentially some of the people's struggles that you help them get through, right? So like if, let's say that person is listening right now, the people that you have seen transform in your own line of work, like who are they? Why do they need to listen to this episode now?
I think it's making them realize that although it can feel so lonely when you are going through what you are going through and that no one really gets it, there's this kind of paradox of this shared loneliness that we have, that there's a lot of struggling out there and there's a lot of suffering, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but no one knows what I individually am going through. And people will sometimes sit there day to day going through the routines of life and just think they've got this mask on. And unfortunately, people think I'm this, but that's not how I feel. And it's us sitting here today and saying, number one, there are lots of people like me out there who are there to very much help you to realize that sometimes you need that kind of just a bit of guidance. It's that ability to say to yourself, you know what, as of today, I don't want my life to continue being like this. I don't want to keep feeling like this. And I do have the ability to change that. It's not going to be an easy ride. It's going to be hard. It's one of the longest journeys I'll ever go on, is the process of healing and the process of growth. And as we know, growth comes from the hard times, not the easy times, but it's the most worthwhile journey you'll ever go on. So it's starting to realize that there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing that can't be helped. I don't like using the term fixed. I don't think people are broken. I think it's a case of wherever you are right now is your reality, and that's okay. And rather than us resisting it and trying to be someone else and wish we didn't have the life we had or wish we didn't feel the way we did, it's more about acceptance. And then once we got through to acceptance, it's then starting to say, okay, so what needs to happen to actually change to a version of myself that I genuinely want to be, that it's me. It's not someone else telling me who I should be. It's not society or whoever else it might be saying, this is what I'm meant to do or meant to be. It's me saying, I am who I am. And if anything, it's me getting closer to who I am, not further away from it.
And it comes back to that beautiful word of authenticity. And I feel, I don't know about you, Will, but in my personal experience, authenticity to me, I feel is like an ever evolving flower. The vision of a flower comes to mind, whereby like it starts to open and you're like, oh, this is me. And then a new level of life happens and you're like, oh, wait, there's more to be discovered here. And then it just kind of keeps growing and that flower turns into like a beautiful bush thing, and then it turns into the jungle. And I guess what I'm trying to get across is that I feel authenticity will grow with you. Is this?
For sure. I think that's really nicely put. You're right. And it's self-discovery is a never-ending journey. There's no, in the counseling world, they talk about this thing, self-actualization. But the problem I have with that word is there's a full stop at the end of it. It's like actualization, as though it's like once you get to there, you're done. And it's like, that's not how it works. It is a constant journey of, as you said, you know, blossoming and finding out, oh, there's this part of me that I never realized was there. And no matter how okay you are, and when I use that word, I use it in terms of even when life is going pretty well and you're feeling good about things, we're all going to get knocked down constantly throughout life. That's the nature of it, which is where this word resilience comes in. It's not about never going through the hard times. It's about when you do go through them, because they will come, you know how to kind of get through them because you've built that resilience up, because you've built that trust up with yourself that you've been here before. It may be a completely different situation, but you have been in the same place where you thought, I don't know if I can get through this. And we go back to that kind of, you know, slightly cliche, but it's like, am I going to go over it, round it, through it, whatever it means, I'm not going to stop moving forward. So yes, that self-discovery is ever evolving. And I think that's what makes it exciting, because it's like, I don't know what's coming. And we sometimes forget how much can change in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it might be. I think we sometimes get scared that we're like, oh, I'm turning 30 and, you know, I still haven't figured it out. And it's like, you're turning 30. Like you're not even a third of the way through your life, probably. Like you've got so much time and you're still so young. But even if you're 60 and you're still figuring it out, it's like, that's beautiful, because you're not allowing yourself to just be one version of yourself. You're saying, you know, there's always something else maybe to be learning. But at the same time, if I'm okay with who I am and I want to be that way for a bit, then I can also be that way. I don't have to change all the time. I don't have to be constantly working on myself. So you'll probably realize that I tend to sort of say one thing, but then I challenge it quite quickly and to say, but actually it's not the only way to think about it. And a big part of my socials, my Instagram, stuff like that, is about changing the perspective. There's not just one way to think about something or see something. There's always another way. And sometimes it's quite good to be, well, actually, I think it's always good to be open-minded with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. The quote that comes to mind is that if you have your mind like a parachute, right, it will work because it's open. Okay, but if it's not open, it's not going to work. Yeah, like that. So for those that are listening and they're like, okay, great. So Will said self-discovery is going to be ever evolving, and Elise spoke about some random bush. Now, what about like those people that are going through life and maybe they're unaware that they're being inauthentic? How would you know? Like, would you know you're not being authentic right now?
I think the way you become aware of it, and you're right, there are lots of people who probably aren't, and that can split into two categories. So some don't really mind and they just are happy with the way things are, and some are, you know, that it's almost like the way they're living their life just doesn't seem to align. And I always say that if your thoughts, your feelings and your actions, you know, they need to kind of be aligned for you to be living authentically. So in terms of spotting when someone is unaware of being inauthentic, I think it's always comes down to, I like to say that the mind is made up of two parts. You've got yourself and your ego. And your ego always comes into play when it's basically trying to cover up for something. It's trying to kind of control you. And I never believe in the idea of like, you know, abolish the ego or get rid of the ego. It's about learning to befriend it. It's about learning that it's there, because we all have one, and it can also serve us really well. It's the thing that bigs us up. It's the thing that says I'm great, but it's also the thing that says I'm terrible, and, you know, can go down the very negative route. And for me, I can sometimes see it in like the nuances of life, where like the way you're just speaking to someone and the way they react to things. I think, you know, people's responses to just day-to-day life in terms of, you know, what's their emotional volatility like? What kind of things are they talking about that serve them? Because I think although everyone has their things that they like, that they do, that fill their cup up, I think it's also, you know, are you doing this because someone told you to, because you believe that's what's right? Or are you doing this because it's generally what actually serves you? And it takes a long time to get there. Like it took me years. And I'm still figuring it out. And I'm sure things will change over, going forward. But it's that ability to say, I'm doing this for me. And I'm not doing this because I'm trying to please other people or I'm trying to prove a point. This kind of comes down to like, this is about me now. And we kind of go into this area of, in order to become aware of your own authenticity, you first of all got to be aware that yes, you're not being authentic, and then you've got to think, well, what do I want to do about it? And if I do want to do something about it, what's that going to look like? And initially, you do have to go out. I do believe you have to you probably do have to do a little bit of searching around, maybe reading stuff, listening to podcasts, sort of figuring it all out whilst you get information from the outside. But that will quickly be replaced by, okay, what's actually going on the inside? And that's obviously with the work I do with people in the coaching and counseling space this isn't about what anyone else thinks or what anyone else is doing. This is about, let's hold the mirror up. And I want to now find out who you really are.
So what about your own personal journey? Because I think like, even from when you were telling me just now about figuring out what didn't align to versus like thoughts, feelings, action. So basically to sum up, if you're writing notes, being inauthentic is when your thoughts, feelings, actions aren't lining up. Is that right? And then it's about a process of, okay, what do you want instead? And how do you want to feel? And then going on that journey to discover what that actually is and what's true for you rather than the conditioning maybe of your past.
Yeah.
Is this right? So what come to mind, and we'll come back to your journey in a second, is imagine if you were to wake up every day from birth, right? Or when you could eat edible food, and then to now, and you're eating the same breakfast every single day. All you would know is that particular meal for breakfast, right? Yeah. But if you hadn't tried anything else or you hadn't known of anything else, then why would you go searching for anything else? You just expect that is what everyone has for breakfast, right?
That's true.
And so you may be coming to a point in your life when you're kind of getting your breakfast and going, hang on, is this the only thing that I can have or order? And you may have even heard stories through the grapevine, through other families or on social media. I think social media helps with that now, is that other people are experiencing this and maybe you can too. And it's this point where you question, okay, wow, eat that breakfast like you're eating it for the first time. And is this actually something that you like, or has it been something you conditioned to like?
For sure.
And making those conscious choices and decisions moving forward. So on that, when was that point for you when you kind of had that moment of, hang on, is this truly what I want for me?
Yeah. And I think for me, I was very much I was in the box. My life growing up was, I was very blessed with, being able to go to a good school, university, and then I got a grad scheme job out of university. And that was the kind of the route that most of people that I was friends with were taking. And there was a big part of me that thought, this is my life and I'll be in this job or at least in this industry. And then I'll meet someone, I'll have a family, and that'll be my life. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm always very clear on saying that, it's your journey. Just because it's different from someone else's doesn't make it better. And so it's more about you saying, but is that, as you've just said, the only way it should be? And I just found myself starting to question it about 2 or 3 years into this job in the city. And I just thought, something's not sitting right here. There must be more to life, or at least I feel like in my life, there's more potential to be accessed that I am not accessing right now. And so the starting point is, well, if I quit my job, what am I going to do instead? And I thought, I want to go and do my own thing. Maybe I don't even want to have a boss. I want to work for myself. And actually, my story comes from, so I mentioned this earlier, the kind of personal side of it. So I had never really been I was very fortunate that I'd never sort of struggled with my mental health growing up, but my younger brother was someone who did. And growing up, it was something that we were aware of in our family, but we weren't sure maybe how to respond to it. And as he got older and I got older as well, I wanted to kind of learn more about it. And I also started discovering that more people around me were struggling, and I was becoming more aware of that. And so at the same time, he was this incredibly creative guy, and he created this clothing brand because he wanted to put mental health and fashion together, because he thought we wear clothes to make ourselves feel good, to express ourselves. Why can't we create this idea where we'd give money, profits to charity in order to allow people to wear their heart on their sleeve, not have this mask on? What I'm wearing is who I am. And it was a school project that he worked on that was incredible. And we all said, you've got to make this a real brand. You've got to take it out, and it was something that he believed in, and we all did. And unfortunately, at the same time, he was starting to struggle more and more with his mental health. And back in 2019, so about 2 or 3 years after I'd left uni and I was in this job, tragically, he lost his life. And it was an accident, what happened, but it was obviously something that left a huge kind of hole in our family, because, as anyone know listening as well, who's been through grief and been through loss, is something that is so kind of, the way you navigate it is, although it can affect a family in the same way, it's actually something that's very individual, because no one goes through the same process. And I think for me, big part of it was understanding how fragile life was, and the fact that he was very young, and knowing that there had to be more to my life. And I almost wanted to start living more through him. I wanted to respond to what had happened in a way that was going to take advantage of what I had in front of me, and using his ideas around the clothing brand and taking that to, essentially, I ended up taking it to market and creating a real brand around it, because I wanted to start increasing the awareness of not just mental illness, but also knowing that I could do more with my life, and that he had this energy about him when he was alive that was just so kind of electric and very, he could walk into a room and he'd make an impact. And I thought, I'd love to be that kind of person, or at least if I can't be that person, I'd love to try and live that way and be incredibly grateful, and do as much as I can to eventually get to the end of my life never feeling like I'd left a stone unturned, and that, I put everything into it. So I took the brand on and I made it a real thing. And, we took it to market, created the clothing, and it was an incredible first business, and it was I loved it. Don't get me wrong, it came with a lot of its challenges, but it was it ended up being something that was kind of a legacy to him. And so that was what got me into the mental health space. And then following on from that, I decided I wanted to start helping people directly, because although the clothing brand was great and we were giving profits to a mental health charity, and I was meeting people and having these conversations, I still felt like I wanted to do more from like a direct impact. So I started training to be coach, a counselor, and then started bringing on my own clients, and here we are today.
Wow. I'm honestly that is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing with me. Yeah, that's kind of left me a little bit speechless. I didn't even expect that about you. I didn't know that about you.
No, a lot of people don't, because it's not, although it's very important to me and it's part of my life and part of my story, it's something that I'm very happy to talk about, but it's something that I don't just jump down into. It's kind of,
course,
need the space, don't need to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly why I'm talking about it here.
Yeah, which is beautiful. And I think that everyone listening right now will have resonated or be inspired in some way, especially your perspective of not being held back by those emotions, but feeling it and doing something with it anyway. I think there's a real theme going on right now for the personal development industry of feeling the emotions and continuing on through life feeling it, not avoiding it. I see there's a potential shadow aspect of being positive and being happy and being growth minded, right? Where it's if something is feeling heavy, whether it be grief or whether it be frustration or anger or fear, that it's to deny that it's even going on in the first place, or to suppress or reject actually experiencing what that is. And I think I even went to an event the other day that was explaining the same thing of just being able to use your emotions in motion, energy in motion.
Sure.
And I think that's really powerful, because some of the most amazing pieces of art, businesses, music have come from those challenging times. Kind of like you were saying before, we all will experience those moments, and it's what you do with it.
Sure.
That leaves the legacy, not sitting in it and letting it hold you back.
Yeah. And I think, and again, and as you'll know as well, because I know you've been through your own journey, and, so many of us have been through the kind of challenges of life, and people I've worked with. And sometimes I kind of really have to catch myself thinking God, some people have been through hell and back. And it always really inspires me. And I always admire those people that you hear their stories and you're like, wow, the fact that you're stood here today, the way you are, and whatever you've done with your challenges is incredible. And it's beautiful. And I think, yes, I appreciate, and going back to your point around You know, it's not about running away from the challenge. It's not about hiding or suppressing the emotions. It's about facing them, which is an incredibly scary thing to do. And some people don't know how to. And that's where that's when the sort of need for help comes along. It's like, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there's also nothing wrong with not making something like a challenge that you've been through, whether it's grief or whether, you know, whatever it might be. You don't necessarily have to make it into this big kind of lifelong sort of project. It can also just be the simple thing of, well, you know what, I've been through this really tough thing, but I'm no longer going to let it control my life. I'm not going to be a passive agent to it, because although I do genuinely believe that, you know, people who go through the hard times, if anything, there's more growth there, because we know, you know, that's where the growth kind of comes from. I do believe that everyone has the strength within them to get through to the other side, that there is always light at the end of the tunnel. And that does come from a choice to no longer let it weigh you down. But if anything, it can actually be something that becomes like the foundations of the resilience of your strength, growth. But whether that takes weeks, months, years, whatever it is, it's like, it's your journey. But I'm here kind of saying that it can literally start as of like tomorrow, like today. You don't have to wait until a certain time. There's not like something else has to happen before you're allowed to make that decision for that to be the case. You are in full control of your life, or most of us are. You know, it's that ability to say, it is within me. I'm a human being. I'm here on this earth. You know, we look at the odds of you even being here. It's like 1 in 300 billion. You've already kind of crossed the hardest odds you're ever going to face. Yeah. You know, you've already gone through the hardest thing. You know, you are here today. And it's within you. Of course it is, because I'm no different to you. We're all here on this earth. We're all fighting. We're all kind of, you know, getting by. And there's people, and, you know, it's never about comparison or who's been through what. It's more just, there is, I genuinely think, a thing, if they've been through it, why can't I? And that question of why not me? You know, why can't I? What's stopping me? The only thing that's stopping me is what's up here. That's it. No one telling me I can't. It's just me telling me I can't.
Okay. So then on that, if let's say someone's listening and they're like, okay, well, my mindset is holding me back, and they're feeling that hesitation towards going to follow through on whatever's inspired them in their life to take action or create, right? They've noticed and become aware of where they're being authentic, where they're being held back. So what can be then their next action step from this point to help them move past that barrier they're experiencing?
Their own mindset. Well, I guess for me, it's always the question back of, okay, what's the fear there? Because there's always, if your mindset's telling you that you can't or restricting you, it's the question back is always, well, what are your insecurities? What are your fears? What are your doubts? What are they saying? What's your ego saying to you? No, you can't do that. You're not good enough. No, don't even bother. You know, is it because you don't feel like you have enough worth? Do you not have enough? You know, is there what's missing, I guess? And so it's going introspectively and asking yourself, if I was to write down everything that my mind is telling me about why I can't do that, what would come out? And once it's come out, what's in my control that I can actually flip? So if my mind's telling me I'm not good enough to start my own business, or I don't have enough knowledge, or whatever it is, it's you starting to say, well, what is actually in my control and what can I actually flip and make very much a positive statement? It's like, well, who says I'm not good enough? You know, yes, I haven't done this before, and this is a very new thing. The only way I'm going to find out is by trying, by just going for it and by taking the leap. And if I fail, fine, I fail. I move on to the next thing. You know, that whole thing of failure is part of the process. There's no such thing as someone who's gotten to the other side and without failing many, many times.
Yeah.
And so it's been able to say to yourself, if my mindset is the thing that's holding me back, then I need to allow myself to get into a more positive space with it. And that is obviously is where sometimes people need that help. They need someone to kind of have that soundboard, that, you know, that space where they can sort of talk about what's actually going on in their heads and get it off, get it out of their, get off their chest, and be able to sort of be challenged. But you're allowed to do that to yourself as well. That's why it's sometimes quite helpful to this whole duality of our minds, where you can almost have a conversation with yourself, the good cop, the bad cop, the angel, the devil, whatever way you want to see it. And you sort of say, for every negative thought I have, what's stopping me from flipping it and believing that instead?
Oh, you know what? I really love that you've just said that, because I think that the way that I started out my whole journey was realizing, like, I would get super triggered around like specific people,
right,
and I felt myself judging them and what they looked like, and it was all around appearance, and that's just a conditioning thing from my past and growing up. And so I was really hard on myself, like and my body image, so therefore I would project that to other people and be judgmental of what they looked like. And I noticed this and I became aware, and I was like, kind of like the breakfast thing where I was doing that every day until I realized, like, hang on, wait, is this actually like who I want to be? Is this the
Yeah.
type of person that I want to be? Judgy, right? And so I questioned those thoughts. Okay, well, why am I thinking like that? What is that person triggering in me? What is the feeling? Is it fear? Is it anger? Is it like isolation or whatever? And I then began to flip it, and I would, for every one judgmental thought that I would have, I would flip it into 3 things that I really love about that person or whatever I was judging. And I thought, well, in terms of like balance, if I can overpower that one thing with 3, then maybe I will change that habit. And eventually, the things that I would see and force myself to see in like these people that I loved would actually be more present in my reality, because I was rewiring, which is like your reticular activating system in your brain, to be more biased to seeing those things in people. So for me, I started making friends with people who initially first triggered me or made me feel insecure, because I realized it's only my own insecurities. Like no one could make me feel a certain way, right?
Yeah.
It's me who was feeling that way. And I ended up befriending these people. And it was only because their confidence was triggering my lack of confidence that then I was able to grow into more confidence for myself. So I love that you've used this like flip thought like process, because that's exactly what I did when I first started.
Yeah. And that's, yeah, I think you're so right. It's that, and you know, my judgment on them was then something that I decided, as we know, all judgment is self-judgment. And it's something that I still have to catch myself on, you know, a lot of the time. It's the minute I make a judgment on someone, even in my head, I think, wait a minute, what's actually going on inside me that's causing me to judge that person? Because it's nothing to do with them. It's all to do with me. And as you said, with things like insecurities and whatever, when they come out, that's just people prodding the wounds that are still there that you haven't healed yet. So it's always kind of hold the mirror up. You know, it's what's actually going on inside me. And as I said, we come back to this ego. The ego wants us to suffer, so it'll find reasons to pull other people apart, thinking it's going to make us feel better, but actually it's making us feel worse. And it comes back to this thing that it's this whole equal horizontal relationships is what it's called. Is Alfred Adler was this psychologist from the 20th century, and everything is horizontal relationships. There's no vertical. There's no you're better and I'm better than you. It's all very much we are all equal, which goes back to this point that I said earlier around every single person has the potential in them. There's no kind of, yeah, but he's just better than me, or she's just, you know, stronger than me. It's like, no. That's there within you. It just needs to be accessed. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I agree. It's this, you know, judgment is, you know, it's almost, I think it should be one of the kind of cardinal sins. It's one of those things that it does not help anyone unless it's positive judgment. But it's that ability to say to yourself, yeah, what's really going on here? And just catching your mind when it goes into that negative headspace, you know, well, steady on. Like I can feel you're there and I know what you're trying to do. Why is what you're saying true? Or why is it going to add any benefit to me? And if it's not, can I let it go? If I can't let it go, can I do something about it to change it, to stop myself thinking that way? You know, you always have a decision to either let it go or change it. You know, that's, I don't mean to oversimplify it, because it takes a while to get to that point where it's that quick. But most people are so stuck in the cycle of negative thoughts because they've been doing it for so many years that the idea of not being in that space is like, oh, that's really hard for me to even start thinking about. How do I go about that? And it's like, well, as with anything, start from the beginning, one step at a time. Let's build from the ground up. And it's just giving yourself that ability to train it like a muscle, you know, and catch yourself.
So, okay, then for people who may have caught themselves in this negative thinking, feeling loop, right? What would be like your step-by-step process from, let's say, today that people are keen to get out of it, that they can do to think more positive?
So just to say, the average person has more negative thoughts than positive thoughts a day. I think we have something like 35,000 thoughts a day. More of them, unfortunately, are negative. Now, that's not to say, well, one thing I will also say is, and we know this, you are not your thoughts. So I think people also think that if I have a negative thought, it must mean it's my truth. And it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. Your thoughts aren't real. You exist in the space your thoughts are created in, and you don't control what thought you have. But the next step is how you respond to it. That's the part. And that's what brings all the suffering. It's never to do with the thought. It's to do with your response to the thought. Because if 2 people have the same thought and one of them hasn't learned to deal with them, and they think they tell themselves they're whatever, you know, and they give themselves a negative thought and they think, right, that's now my reality. Spiral, spiral, spiral. The other person has the same thought and they think, is that true? No, it's not. I'm going to let that go. Or, well, actually, no, that's not true, because this thing is actually more true, and I'm going to flip that, put into positive, and that's now going to be the thing I believe. So in terms of like the step-by-step process, I mean, like, again, there is kind of, it can't kind of be done in one go. But one process that is not mine, it's actually from this guy called Doc Arman. Has this thing which links back to this, have these negative thoughts and then flip them. It's when the thought comes through, you ask yourself, is it true? Once you've decided whether it's true or not, and it probably most likely isn't, you then flip it to the positive and start believing that. So that's his process. The one that I also quite like doing is this, awareness and acceptance. It's the thought comes through, and we'll use a tangible example. So it's something like, I don't deserve to be happy. And you think, okay, I don't deserve to be happy. Why is that true? And then the ego will come in and go, because, your life is worthless. You don't have anything to live for. You don't have anything to be happy about. Of course you don't deserve to be happy. And you start saying back to yourself, okay, well, if you're trying to make me believe that as my reality, what is stopping me from believing the complete opposite? Because if for so many years I've believed that side of things, just because that feels like is the natural way of my mind, why am I going to let that become the dominant force in my mind? Why am I letting my ego, particularly the negative side of it, become the controlling force in my life? And can I just for even if it's for like a few minutes, I'm not saying you've got to do this for like days on end, but just this one time, can I just sit with this thought and understand where it's coming from and kind of almost question it back? Because it's not used to being questioned back. It's just so used to just getting its way. It's so used to, and we think that by suppressing it and ignoring it, and we're like, oh, whatever, we think it's going to go away, but it doesn't. It gains more energy. And the only way to, I guess, take the energy back, put it into a more positive space, is by just starting to question it and starting to say to yourself, where is this coming from? Does this come from me? Does it come from a place of my childhood? Does it come from something someone said to me when I was younger? Does it come from a parent? And you start having to go through the whole process of like, what's actually going on here? Because it isn't just about what's happening in front of me right now. This goes a lot deeper, because the chances are it's been the way I've been thinking for years and years and years. So I need to go right back to the beginning. And that's obviously where the whole thing of like, okay, what's happened in your past? And there's always something to come out. And I'm not saying we should live in our past. I'm not saying that the past is always a determinant of the future, but it's important to at least address it and know that it's, we've gone through that healing process. Where do you find yourself today? If you're still feeling stuck, okay, there's other ways we can go, other routes we can go down.
I really like that you've said this whole thing, not focusing too much on the past, because I think like in the healing space, there can be like this relationship with healing in general. And it's just like they're always stuck in the healing because it's like that is what their ego identifies with. Okay, there's always more to discover and uncover and heal. And you're never actually just realizing that, like you said before, you're completely whole as you are now. Yeah. It's just another layer to discover, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're broken and need constant healing and fixing. It's just about what makes you feel good, what makes you feel free and authentically you and in alignment with what you want to do. And if it doesn't feel like, I feel like there's a certain level of healing in your past that you can do before you go, okay, hang on, like I don't need to do this healing now. I think I'm using it as like a procrastination of actually taking that step forward. Sure.
And I really like how you brought up this idea of there's always something to heal. There's always something in the past we can go back to. There's always something more. And it's a bit of a fine line, I think. And I'm still learning this from the one side of like, heal, do everything you can, work on yourself, constantly, doing something. And then the other side of it, which kind of comes from a bit of a Buddhist philosophy. And I kind of read into a lot of Buddhism because I think there's some of it that resonates with me, which is stop doing all of that. Just be you and be present. There is no healing. There is no kind of, again, fixing. There is no, well, I've got to sort this out before I can then feel this way. It's just, why not just be present right now with exactly what's in front of you and just be okay with that? Which is the whole reason why you look at monks and their philosophy on life, which is to strip everything back. They don't have any possessions. They have nothing. They just live very simple lives of just being present day to day and being of service to others. Now, obviously, we can't all be monks, but I'm not saying we all want to be. But I think for me, a lot of people still need to go through the healing journey. They still need to get through kind of a lot of their past and whatever. But there does come a point when you can then say, you know what, I'm not going to keep thinking like, what's the next thing that I need to work on? What's the next thing I need to get to? The next plateau I need to reach? Because although for some people that is exciting and that comes with, the growth and whatever, that's okay if that's the way you want to live your life, it's also really important to know that you are at any moment allowed to say to yourself, you know what? The way my life is right now is okay. Yeah, I didn't get everything right in the past. Yeah, there's some stuff I could probably spend a year talking about to whoever, coach, whatever, and, try and fix it and all the rest of it. But actually, if I can just be sat here today and be okay with the way things are and be present and whatever, then who's stopping me from doing that? Like, I agree, like, go for it. It's just, I think you've got to work out what works for you. Are you the person that needs to talk about it, to process it, to kind of really kind of get all of that stuff that's just been sitting there as like energy in your body for years and years and get it out and process it? I think most people sit on that side.
Yeah.
Or are you someone that's just going to say, no, I'm not going to kind of overcomplicate it? It's this thing of sometimes when we think about ourselves too much, that's when the problems start. So whereas if you were just to let it go and not think about yourself and put others, not put others first, but think about other things and not be constantly thinking so much about what's going on in your head and this and that, and, oh, I didn't do this, and, oh, I need to be journaling and doing this and that every single day and whatever, and it just overwhelms you. It can almost go too far the other way. So it's a balance. Only you will ever know what that balance is, how that balance needs to be, how you need to strike that balance in your life.
And I think if you're listening to this right now and you're following along with that balance piece, what I've found really useful is just to follow what brings me joy and where I feel the most joy. Because when you're in that emotion or that frequency, that is when most things in terms of law of attraction, like, will manifest to you. But also when you're in flow state, it's when you have the best ideas, creativity. And that, I believe, is what life is all about, is just experiencing joy and understanding like what really sets your soul on fire. And I think when you can identify what those things are, even if it's just a little glimpse of like, wow, that really made me happy. I helped someone with this today, or I created this thing, or I went to this park, or it could just be something so simple. But whatever that is that gives you even just like that little bit of warmth in your heart, like, go do those things more often. And I think that is the best way to live life and move forward from the things of healing in the past. Like, I really feel that in the past healing, like you said, a lot of people do still need that, but there does come a point where it's okay to just have fun.
Yeah. And you're so right. Life is going to be, or the happiness of life is going to be made up by those small, almost nameless moments of joy. People think it's the big grand moments. People think it's the big like turning points in their life, but they're only big moments because they happen like once every maybe few years. And obviously they're needed in sometimes. And that's kind of, you climb the mountain and you get to the peak, but you're so right. It's the small moments of joy that are sort of dotted around, hopefully in day-to-day life. And that comes with things like your gratitude for it, because you're more joyful for life when you're more grateful for it. And it's everything that's around you in front of you. People always think the happiness is somewhere else. It's where you are right now, because there's always something to look around at and to either feel or to see or to do that's going to bring that happiness. And that really is the simple parts of life. It's, as you said, it's the park that you're going for a walk around. It's the time you spend with your pet. It's the friends that you laugh with. It's things that it is surrounding lots of us. And I just think people sometimes are missing it because they think, well, it should be a bit more, that there's something else out there. Like, where is that happiness? And it's never somewhere else. And that's unfortunately a fallacy of life that people have fallen into. It's the idea that one day I will be happy, I will find it, I just need a bit more time, or I need to do this and then I'll get there. It doesn't work like that. And yeah.
Then when they do get there, they're still not happy.
You're chasing an impossible thing that just doesn't exist in the first place. It's, and also to know that happiness is obviously something that you can feel a lot, but it is a feeling. It is not a constant. So it's not about, well, I just want to be happy, because it doesn't work like that. You're never going to be happy forever. Of course, you're going to have the waves of life. And that's what makes you're a human being. You have lots of emotions. As we said before, energy and motion. It's always on the move. One day's sad, next day's happy, next day's frustrated, next day's whatever. And even within those days, it's 100 different emotions at once. And so we come back to being present, and this idea that it's never judging the emotion. It's never suppressing it or trying to avoid it. It's just feeling it, knowing it will pass and the next emotion will come through. Because if you can be okay with sadness, you can be okay with anger, you can be okay with frustration, you can be okay with happiness. It's no one emotion is better than the others. Of course, we'd also all rather feel the more positive ones, but it's only because we judge them as good or bad that they are so. Whereas actually, they're just part of who we are. That's just part of our makeup. And that in itself, being so accepting of any emotion that comes through and being so present with it and never thinking, God, like now it's going to be like this for days and then whatever, and just thinking it'll pass and it will be okay. That in itself is going to bring you more peace, which will then allow your life to feel like actually there probably are more moments of feeling good.
I think that in itself is a discipline as well, something that you would have to practice, right? Because you mentioned like nothing emotionally is good or bad, right? That we have all of these spectrums of emotions because that is what we are meant to experience in life, right? And the way that we process certain things. I feel that maybe there's this perception that some emotions are bad or they feel more chaotic because we're just not practiced in them. I come across so many clients, so many individuals that are afraid to express these emotions because they haven't fully let themselves feel it. So, for example, working with a young male who is scared to show his anger for a certain scenario, and it's because of the projection of society that anger is a bad thing and you can't show your anger, especially for men, right? And it's then these men feel you can, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. These men that haven't allowed themselves to fully express and know how to control that emotion, that when later down the track they get triggered, can't control it because they haven't actually let themselves sit in it because of this whole thing around feeling anger is bad. But actually it's not really. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and you're right. And there is, and you know, I will speak as a man. It's there's almost a stigma behind the idea that you're not allowed to fully express yourself. It's why a lot of men have mental illnesses and deal with a lot of their emotions on their own because they think either they don't want people to know how they're really struggling because supposedly they're meant to be okay. But as you said, when they do, sometimes it can come out in quite kind of, maybe it's aggression, maybe it's whatever it is. It's quite a strong emotion. And anger is, it's a core emotion. It's one of the most revealing ones there are. It's kind of like, it's the deepest you can get with it. And so using the example of your client that you said is kind of almost scared of revealing that anger. It goes back to that thing of the more you hide it, the more you suppress it, the stronger it's going to get. And so you're right, being able to have that space where you are allowed to release it, where you're allowed to reveal it, is unfortunately quite hard sometimes. In society in general, as you said, we're supposed to be okay. We're, particularly as men, we're just meant to just, not kind of get bogged down by emotions and just, get over it. It's that old kind of the generation before us, just hide your emotions and crack on. There's, you've got to kind of be that. They almost thought that was the resilience. It's just never breaking, never crying, never getting angry. But actually the resilience comes from the vulnerability of being able to say, no, I need to express this emotion and I'm not going to hide it anymore. Because that's more scary. Because as you said, what are people going to think and all the rest of it? And I appreciate not everyone has that safe space to be able to do that. Again, we come back to this thing of, if you can sit one-on-one with a counselor, a coach, whatever it is, where you can release that, then, maybe that's what needs to happen. But there's nothing wrong with fearing it. I completely understand, that if there's fear there, it does need to be stepped into at one point though. Otherwise it will just get bigger and bigger and it will feel worse and worse and it will get harder and harder to address.
I really resonate with this myself, actually, as you was talking just now. What brought up was a memory, like when I was in high school, and I was very much the like polite, like quiet kid. Like I would just put my head down, study, whatever. And people would like make a thing of trying to get me to react or be angry because I didn't consider myself a very conflict sort of person. I always would avoid it. I was kind of scared of it because I'd never really let myself feel the full depths of that anger before. So in like behind closed doors, I would get really frustrated and I'd get like, bit triggered by certain things and pissed off easily by something that didn't like go my way or the computer Wi-Fi was being slow. I would get so like exaggeratedly upset with these things that weren't like working. And I remember going through high school and I think someone said something and I just snapped where I gave this person a good spray and it came out of me and I sat down and I laughed. I was like, whoa. And my best friend was standing next to me and she was slightly scared. And then she looked at me and just pissed herself laughing. And we were just giggling and I had to like leave the room. And I was I was literally cacking myself because I was like, whoa, like that is something that I'd never like experienced before. Like just fully standing up for myself and like expressing that anger. but at the same time, it felt so uncontrollable, and it probably wasn't the best environment for it, but I had never gone there before. And as I've done this personal development work, I have had to go there, like with certain qualifications like NLP and hypnosis. They really take you there, and to release those deep, like seated emotions of anger or whatever. And for me, releasing that and letting it go, I found that things didn't trigger me as much, and I never have those outbursts like at all, because I'm able to regulate my emotions and catch it, like when I'm going in that space of, okay, this is pissing me off, or this is frustrating me, a boundary's being crossed here, and how can I communicate that? So that's the story that come up for me, is like, wow, back then when I didn't let myself like actually go through and be vulnerable with something not sitting right, I would just explode like that. Then when I wouldn't deal with it, it would just carry out into every other simple daily task that is just like normal for everyone else. But I would just get so triggered by something that everyone experiences. And then to today, like, I just feel so much more calm and grounded, and I don't have those things day to day that are trivial that trigger me.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's a great story. I like, and I'm glad that the reaction to it was for you to laugh rather than be horrified.
No, I laugh about it now. I'm like, whoa, that was crazy.
But yeah, it's true, and it's a bit like, you almost, the visualization is like a sort of a pot of boiling water that's just like the lid's about to blow off, and then eventually just something snaps. But look, it's you know, man or woman, it's every emotion is equal and is allowed. And the person that comes to my mind is this, I don't know if you've heard of him, Gabor Mate, the psychiatrist.
Yeah, he's amazing.
But he talks about how he went through a lot of his life feeling very angry, and he's now sort of probably seems like one of the most peaceful people there are, and he's so wise, and he's got all this. But he constantly talks about how there was a lot of, even in his marriage and stuff like that, where there would just be this kind of anger within him that he just wasn't expressing properly, and it caused all these other problems. And it's just been able to say to yourself, like, it's okay to feel that. And the fact that I'm feeling it means that there's a reason behind that, and I need to let that go. I need to kind of understand it more. I don't need to run away from it. And I think when we talk about sitting with your emotions, and people are like, what does that mean? You're just supposed to sit on the sofa and just stare at like a wall. No, it's meant to mean as in, rather than trying to like explain them or put logic behind them, don't run away from them. Just be with them. What comes up? Can you label it? Where is it in the body? When it does kind of come up, what thoughts come with it? Is again, are we linking back to something? Is it someone? Is it something about you? And one of the most kind of typical examples is, well, of course it's about me, because it's like, I'm angry because I hate the way I am, or I hate the way my life is. And it's like, okay, great. That's your starting point. I hate the way I am. And if, let's say, the end goal is, I love the way I am, how are we going to get there? Okay, let's break it down. And we kind of go through that process. And I appreciate that a lot of what I've said today is kind of, I'm massively jumping through the hoops, and I'm kind of almost talking about the end goal before I've even explained the rest of the process. But it isn't a quick fix. You do need time. You need to give yourself, it's why people talk about it as years and years kind of going through it. But, as we always say, without being cliche, it's like, that's journey is the important part. It's not about the end goal. You're going to get there. I'm not doubting that. It's just, am I willing to go through those hoops and get lost with it sometimes have no idea what's happening, sometimes think, oh, what is the point in all this, whatever. That's the process, and every single person who has gone through that process has also gone through those waves of like, what is going on here? I don't know. Is this right? Should I be doing that? And feeling lost, I appreciate, is again, we go back to this thing of, it does feel quite lonely, because it's like no one really knows what's actually going on in my head. But the chances are someone has been through probably similar to you, but even if they haven't, it's just about you saying, well, if I'm not willing to necessarily reach out to someone and talk to someone to get help with it, can I at the very least start the journey for myself and just decide as of right now that I'm not going to continue living this way, that I am going to accept every single part of me, because that's what we're made of, is parts. There's no one thing defining us. If you have anger in you, you have anger. That's one part of you. It doesn't make you an angry person. If you're someone who, we love to define ourselves just with one small thing as if it makes us up entirely, but that's just not true.
Like if you're an athlete or you're a parent, it's not just that.
You're not your job. You're not your, you're not your whatever. Like, I'm having a mind blank here in terms of using examples, but you know what I mean? You're not any one thing. You are probably hundreds and hundreds of different things made up of you. And that journey of self-discovery needs to happen for you to sit down and be like, who are you? And we're not almost used to answering that question itself. We're so used to being like, yeah, my name's Will and I'm a coach who lives in London. And it's like, okay, great. But what's actually going on under there? Do you know what your values are? Do you know what your beliefs are? Do you know what your aspirations are? Do you know what and these lists can get huge. And it's like, okay, fine, then go through that process. Know those lists. Why would you not want to know yourself like well enough to be able to say, yeah, I do know who I am. And it's a constant journey of discovery and it's going to change over time. But isn't that the kind of exciting part of life?
And I feel like the deeper that I have learned about myself, or the deeper I know myself, the deeper I can then connect with others. Yeah. Like if I didn't know myself or what my values or aspirations or anything like that was, I probably wouldn't have even come into your life and we probably wouldn't have connected. We wouldn't be having this conversation. And if we were, it would be like every other podcast. It would probably be really boring, right? We'd probably like finish maybe half an hour ago. But if I didn't know myself, I wouldn't be able to connect in the way that I do with not just yourself, but with my audience, with everyone. And I think that really just comes back to authenticity, is just, knowing your thoughts, actions, and your behaviors. And what comes from that is like your values, your beliefs, and what you want for yourself in your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Knowing it.
We meet everyone at the depth of our understanding of ourselves, don't we? That's all we can do. We can only meet them at the level that we're at. And that's also the same with potential. They say, like, the potential we see in others is the potential we see in ourselves. Mm-hmm. So if I think my potential is unlimited, I'll think your potential is unlimited too. Now, I know that then that the argument against that is, well, then it's about you, it's not about me. It's like, yeah, but then let that become something that you can also believe as well, because there's nothing stopping you. And would you rather put your limit on yourself, or would you rather think it's unlimited?
Also, the people that maybe you're comparing yourself to and think, wow, they're so successful, that success is also in you. So same, flipped it on his head.
Sure. And everyone had to start somewhere. No one's born being this, person that's already made it, whatever, the top of the whatever. Anyway, so like,
that's boring.
Exactly. You've got, exactly. So yeah, you're so right. It's the more you discover about yourself, the more there is to discover around you and about the people in front of you. And yeah, it comes back to this thing around no matter who you meet, younger, older, completely different career, or someone that maybe at first you're like, I'm not sure about this person, that open-mindedness of the ability to always learn from someone. Sometimes the learning is, maybe that's what I don't want. Maybe I know that something they've said is not what I like. Hey, never ever think that you're better than or too good for someone, or, we're all guilty of this. Exactly. It's all this equal relationships, and no matter who the person is. And unfortunately, even, a lot of us, and I'm guilty of this as well, you walk past someone who's homeless on the streets and you think, oh, like, obviously there's pity there, but there's an element of like, oh, that's not my problem, oh, imagine that. And it's like, he's you in another life. We are all here to kind of be of service to each other. Never ever think you're better than someone, but never think you're worse than someone either. And just that ability to hold the mirror up and just say to yourself, okay, what's really going on here? When I'm having these thoughts, is it me talking or is it my ego? And if it's my ego talking, what can I do about it to allow it to, or to at least take some control back and understand, okay, is this how I want to feel about myself? No, probably not. So what do I need to do to kind of get there? And if I don't know what to do, let's just start somewhere. And this is the blessing of things like social media and whatever. Like there are people out there. Follow the accounts that are making you feel good. Don't follow the accounts that make you feel worse. Read the books that, whatever it is, there's podcasts and stuff out there, Generation Elevation. Listen.
So Will, like, how can my audience like tune into what you are sharing online? Do you have I know you have a newsletter?
Yeah, the newsletter's just been launched. Yeah. Finally, that was on my to-do list for about a year.
It's done.
It's done. That was out there. So yeah, my name on Instagram is the Mental Resilience Coach. I also am on TikTok with same name. Well, the username's Will Middleton. So those are the two main places. But yeah, the newsletter's out there. I do informative stuff on Wednesdays. I do storytelling on Sundays because I'm a big fan of like parables, stories of, I learn a lot of them from like the monks and like Buddhism and stuff like that because they've got so many. And I think there's always like power in those. And then, yeah, I've got a website as well, The Resilience Coach. So that's obviously where all my coaching and counseling information is.
Amazing. Well, I will pop those links in the show notes for those of you that want to connect in with Will. Now, Will, before we wrap up today, with every guest, I actually get them to tune into their heart or their intuition, what they feel the collective needs to hear right now. And it's the first thing that comes to your mind. So what do the listeners need to hear from you right now?
Is it just a word? Words coming to my head is self-belief. I think at the very crux of it all is, what has to come first is this belief that whatever it is you're going to be striving for, any change, any process you're going to go through in life comes from, okay, I'm going to do this because I believe I can. and I'm not going to let anyone else tell me any different. If I can start with that and I can always hold on to that, then nothing's going to stop me. And that's when my potential becomes unlimited.